Okay, so apparently, I'm sure a lot of you have already noticed my brain will malfunction sometimes as I'm talking. And I suppose the longer I talk, the more of a chance there is for a mental malfunction. So the last video, I was going through right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action. So I did right action. And I was supposed to combine a little bit of right livelihood. Instead, I did a little bit of right effort, which is a little bit out of order. It's not a big deal. And I said that I was going to do a little bit of right livelihood with our next section this time. I'm going to do that, but it was actually a little bit out of order. Right livelihood should have been last video. Right effort should have been combined with this video. So we're going to start with a little bit of right livelihood. It's really not a huge topic. And then right mindfulness and right concentration. So we'll see if we can touch them all in this video. If not, we'll have another video to finish off the Eightfold Path in a more in-depth look. So we had right livelihood is the essence of it is basically right action and right speech combined into how we earn our living. So the things we do to make money, to survive, our livelihood, right? Our professions, things like that. So when you, and that's why it's there together. So you have right speech, right action, right livelihood, because you have those two combined features in how we earn our living. So when you're doing your right livelihood, you are considering, like if you are a vegetarian, for example, you wouldn't make a restaurant that serves meat. You wouldn't have a slaughterhouse for cows. So you apply the things that you have picked up in right action and right speech, and you combine them into your livelihood, the things. So if you were to want to be the president of the United States or a governor or a mayor, it would be very difficult, not impossible, but it would be difficult because you would have to refrain from lying. And politicians notoriously have to lie for one reason or another. So you would have to be that type of politician that that refuses to tell lies and just says things how they are. Those people usually don't get voted into office because people, the way democracy ends up working is because people want that perfect person. The politicians that are best at lying and presenting themselves as the perfect person are the people that end up getting into office. And so we have a whole bunch of liars and frauds in our election system. It doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat. Pretty much every single person who is a politician makes a career off of what they would probably justify as small lies. Well, so it's not that you can't be a politician. It would be that you probably wouldn't get voted into office because you would, if you're following the Eightfold Path, you would attempt or try to refuse to lie, and that would make it very difficult. Because, and they're also good at manipulation, which isn't actually a lie, but as we talked about in the Eightfold Path and the depth of it, you can't really do that either as a Buddhist if you are following the Eightfold Path. So that's why we don't have any really good politicians ever. We're always left with, like this crook or that crook, this person that's really not great versus that person that's really not great. And it's like, well, which one do you choose from? Because our politicians are always people who have made a career off of, ways to either manipulate the truth or just outright lie. And so it's really important in the political system to remember that, but more importantly for you in your livelihood, right livelihood, is to consider those things before you get into them. Salesman or a saleswoman is very similar thing. I tried to be a salesperson years and years ago after I got out of the Army, and they try to what's the right word for it? They don't tell you to lie, but they will try to encourage it somehow, even if it's through underhanded means. They try to get you to, like, because they don't care how you get the sales, you just get the sales. They don't care if you lie. So in sales, manipulation and lies become a very common tactic. So it's not impossible. It's really hard to do sales without lying, which is why I got out of sales very early on when they were trying to. I did not feel comfortable, even like companies like an energy company. I tried to do sales for an energy company to sell electricity, and they were still like something that everybody needs, electricity, and they were still trying to get us to manipulate and lie. And it was just like selling something so innocuous like electricity, and there you go, you still end up being encouraged to tell lies. So I did not like the sales field because of that. Now, if you're very good at presenting things honestly, there are salespeople who work in sales who are honest and make a good career out of it. It's just something to consider if you get into sales or something like that. Will you be put in a position to lie, and do you feel comfortable with refusing to lie? If you don't feel comfortable with refusing to lie, you know that you fall under peer pressure very easily. Sales might not be a good career choice for you. So that kind of is something that you have to be introspective enough to know yourself and know what your triggers are. For me personally, peer pressure does get to me. I don't think I'm so far off to where peer pressure and then boom, I do it, but it does get to me, and I don't feel comfortable in those situations. I'm more likely to stand up for what I believe in and completely quit, which is what I did with sales. Completely quit. I'm not the type of person to stay under that peer pressure and fire because I just don't feel comfortable with it. So I just quit altogether and moved to something that I feel more comfortable with. And so I don't typically cave under the peer pressure. I just remove myself from those environments. And that's just me. Some people just feel very confident in themselves in peer pressure. They don't cave under it, but they don't really care. It's just like, you can pressure me to do this, and I'm just not going to do it. And then, if you know yourself and know that you cave under peer pressure, you might just not want to put yourself in those positions. So, and that's the types of things you think about in Right Livelihood, is to try to understand your professional choices and the way to do it where you are not breaking with your right speech and right action in order to earn your living. So if your whole profession is selling guns and you don't believe in taking lives, and say, well, the guns are for hunting and your Second Amendment right, but as a Buddhist, we don't kill animals either. So for a Buddhist, the American system to have the right to bear arms for self-protection is something that I believe in. The Second Amendment right, I believe in all the amendments. First Amendment all the way to the 10th Amendment, all the way. And our congressional system has even provided means to add amendments, which we have. I don't remember the specific number, somewhere close to 20-ish amendments that have been added. I don't remember the specific number, but we have quite a few amendments that have been added, and that's our system of government that provides that way to do that. And so I do believe in the Second Amendment as far as a system of freedom. People should be provided the opportunity to be able to have self-protection. But I don't think that a Buddhist practicing the Eightfold Path could sell weapons used for killing. And it's not to say that the American system is wrong and that because not everybody, you have your First Amendment right to freedom of religion. A very small percentage of people in the United States is even Buddhist. And regardless, even if 100% were Buddhist, that freedom to choose to be another religion if they want to, in which owning a weapon is not something that is a part of their or owning a weapon or not owning a weapon is not a part of their religion, like it would be for us. They deserve to have that freedom to do that. So if a non-Buddhist wants a gun, this is a country where they have that right to own a gun for self-protection. Also, they don't believe in not harming animals, and they can, kill, a deer or whatever and feel content with themselves and eat it up. Make deer jerky if they want. And that's, within the First Amendment right to do that. And so they should have their Second Amendment right. And having that in our country is good. So I wanted to make that clear. However, for a Buddhist who is practicing the Eightfold Path, we would not sell guns or own guns, because at the end of the day, it's used to kill either a person or an animal, and we would do neither. And so, in right livelihood, if you were, let's say you owned a gun shop, that's something you have to think about. Now, it doesn't mean maybe Buddhism is not the right religion for you if you're really stuck on that, and that's what you want to do. If you really believe in the Eightfold Path and you own a gun shop and you really want to practice the Eightfold Path, you would have to figure out a way, and you don't have to do it immediately. Remember, I think last video we talked about step-by-step, baby steps. So maybe that's part of the Eightfold Path that you can't immediately just boom overnight just start practicing. So maybe you would have to think about another business you can slowly invest into and phase out the business of selling guns. Maybe into your gun store you could bring in something that is not a gun and begin selling that is not harmful. Something, just a random example, snacks, clothes, something else. And begin transitioning your business into something that sells something different. And that's one option. Or maybe you could just have another side business, a second business, and you slowly close down the gun shop. As you sell off the guns, you don't buy more, or you buy less and less and less until you're ready to completely shut it down. And in your other business over here, as it's picking up and generating income, you go to that business and you just move businesses. That's an option. Completely closing down one business that's not in accordance with your right livelihood overnight might be a damaging decision. Are you ready to deal with those repercussions that could happen to you financially? Do you have enough money in your bank account to weather that storm until you pick something new up? So that's why, and I expressed this in the last video, why baby steps is so important to understand. In many cases, when you're just you just want to change everything and take on the whole world all at once, you end up doing more damage than good. Because if you notice that, let's say your livelihood or something that you're doing is not according with the Eightfold Path, there's probably, if you're new to Buddhism, there's probably a lot of things we're doing that's not in accordance with the Eightfold Path. And just taking all of that stuff and just doing a complete roundabout 180 and heading towards the Eightfold Path all at once could cause chaos in your life. So it may be beneficial to really consider the repercussions and how much of those repercussions you can maybe limit by doing things slowly, and what is the best way to go about that. So regardless of what your profession is, and it's just something to consider. So when you're looking at your livelihood, you have to consider, and that's why it's after right speech and right action, is to consider how your right speech and right action could be affected by your livelihood. Are you in a profession or in a job where those two things are put at risk, and you need to maybe make some modifications or changes? So anything. Let's say you own a meat shop, and you're like, okay, well, I got to go vegetarian, because you want to practice the Eightfold Path. It's just something that you have to think about and think through. What is the best way for you to get onto the Eightfold Path, where you're in your livelihood expresses your right speech and right action? Okay, so that is the right livelihood. Now, that actually went a lot longer than I expected it to go. I thought it was going to be a little snippet. We're already at 16 minutes. So, let's talk a little bit about right mindfulness. Because we mentioned that right mindfulness is the lead-in to proper meditation. The idea is to be conscientious and aware, having a sense of awareness in all things that we do. So what we always want to understand is all of our motivations that cause our actions and our words, understanding the roots of it, and just being aware of it. It doesn't mean you immediately change all your actions overnight. Like we said, baby steps. You don't want to just, uproot everything that you've known for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, depending on how old you are. You just sit there, but you do need to think about it, and be thoughtful about it, and be aware of what your motivations are. Is your motivation manipulation? Is that you're doing something, perhaps, in a lot of our cases, we're doing something that, like by itself, there's nothing wrong with it. But if the end goal is to manipulate somebody, to make something appear some way that it's really not, then that's not healthy. And so understanding our motivations helps us really implement right speech and right action and right livelihood properly, so that we're doing it according to our proper motivations, having the right motivations in everything, having the right, and that really goes back even, and remember how everything sort of ties together, and that's why they're not steps, like this one's number 1, this one's number 2. You don't do them in order. You do all 8 aspects of the Eightfold Path all at the same time constantly, because they all are interlaced. You can't just, okay, today, this year, or this month, I'm starting with right understanding, and then I'm going to right thought. You don't do that in the Eightfold Path, because they all go together simultaneously. And this goes back to, right thought. Having the right intentions. But the idea is how can you have the right intentions if you're not aware of your intentions? So having the right intentions in the Eightfold Path with the right thought, but then you've got to actually be capable of analyzing and knowing your intentions. And that's a part of your awareness. So in right mindfulness, what we're doing is we are beginning to focus and analyze and understand and be aware of at all times the things that I do and the intentions behind them. And so this sense of awareness in all my actions. And it leads into meditation, because one of the things we were doing in our meditation was to increase our focus. Obviously, I'm not there. If you needed proof that I'm not enlightened, the fact that my brain malfunctions the longer I talk is proof, because that's an idea of what, to increase my focus. I don't have that level of focus. I could get off on a rabbit trail. I get tangential. I talk too much. I get verbose. And because the inability of my brain to maintain that level of consciousness that is required to get to enlightenment, my brain doesn't have that. And that's right concentration. Right concentration deals with your meditative state, and that meditative state really should permeate all things we do, which is why some circles have talked about walking meditation, in order to be able to get us into that meditative state even when we're doing things. But a lot of times we start small, baby steps, and we begin our meditation. And in meditation, and so the right mindfulness and right concentration go hand in hand. And that's another thing about not being able to separate them and do one than the other. They both have to be done together, because when you're doing when you're being conscientious and aware, you're getting yourself towards that meditative state. But the meditative state is to feed your awareness and to strengthen the mind to help you in your awareness. And so we start with a meditative thing. In Buddhist meditation, what did the actual Buddha teach as far as meditation? And the principal meditative practice he taught, there are different forms of meditation that can be used to help, but the principal form of meditation that I've read from the Buddha was breathing meditation. So you sit, maybe you use the lotus position, maybe you don't, and you sit there and you take a deep breath, and you're aware of the sensation of the breath as it enters the lungs, goes through, and you try to feel the breath as it enters the body, and you breathe out. And as it breathes out, you feel the sensation of it exiting. You could imagine light entering the body and darkness being exhaled from the body. There's different things you can do mentally to help increase your concentration. But essentially, what are you doing? You're being aware of the breath. You're forcing your mind to not divert from your purpose. And so, right mindfulness and right concentration are done together. They cannot be separated. They're inseparable. They're two different things. That's why that they're talked about differently. But it is really important to do them together, because your awareness of everything is fed by your concentration, your meditation, and vice versa. You are able to increase your meditative abilities and lead into meditation. And this is about a lifestyle. This is not about meditating and out-of-body experiences. Buddha didn't talk about things like that in that sense. It wasn't about, like getting enraptured up into a heaven or something. It was about becoming aware of our actions, becoming constantly, always aware of our actions and why we're doing them, our motivations behind them. And so the Buddhist sense of the Eightfold Path is always directed towards our conscientious behavior and being in a sense of awareness, and and gaining insight into ourselves and expressing more selflessness rather than selfishness. And so this is the Eightfold Path, is a practice of a lifestyle, and it's not about going to heaven. It's about ending suffering. And so you think about things in terms of suffering and what causes suffering. And so that is, just like with right effort, it permeates everything. So when we mention right effort, what we say, it's like literally every single aspect, whether it's right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right mindfulness, right concentration. All of those, every time you do one of those, you are putting effort into it, and that's your right effort. So we classify each aspect of that path separately, but they're all done together. They're not done like in steps. It's not the 8 steps. Like once you get, you do 1, then you do 2, then you do 3, and once you get to 8, then you're getting to enlightenment. That's not the way the Eightfold Path works. The Eightfold Path works as the wheel, and they're all interconnected, and they're all done simultaneously at all times together. Okay, and so you look at them, and you start with small baby steps with each of them, which is why we start with the 5 precepts, because the 5 precepts essentially gives you your beginning piece. So you take on the 5 precepts. Once you take on the 5 precepts and you practice that, and then you study the Eightfold Path as you go along doing the 5 precepts, and then you begin to understand how to implement more of the Eightfold Path into your life. So it gives depth to the 5 precepts. The 5 precepts, as I said before, is like walking onto the beach, maybe even entering into the water, maybe as much as ankle deep. But once you get deep into the ocean and into the ocean, that's the Eightfold Path. And we've explored more of, I don't know if it's the moon or the Mars, more of outer space, let's say, than we have of the ocean. The ocean is very vast and huge, and that's the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is so vast and so deep. It's really hard to understand the immensity of it. So we take these aspects and look at them and grow in them. And I've just broken things down deeper, and yet there's so much more than anything I could even say, or even more than I could understand at this moment. So when I encourage people to take up on the Eightfold Path, if that's something you think is good for you, remember the baby steps and just looking at it. Be gentle with yourself. Be compassionate to yourself. You can't be compassionate to other people or animals if you're not first compassionate to yourself. If you don't first forgive yourself, you can't forgive others. Forgiveness always starts with yourself. Okay. Some of the most homophobic people on this planet are people who are gay and can't accept themselves or can't forgive themselves because they think it's a sin. And you'll see a lot of people who are gay, okay, they may not admit it, but okay, they're gay and they hate gay people because they don't even forgive themselves. And that's just true about everything. It's just one example that pops into my head. So you'll see a lot of people, when they can't forgive themselves, it turns into hatred towards other people, even if it's the same thing that they have either done or internalized for themselves, and just they're not allowed to do that behavior. They can't forgive themselves, or it could be something else entirely. They're just incapable of forgiving themselves, and that reflects into not forgiving others. Some sort of trauma they experienced in their childhood that they feel like it's their fault. Maybe a little brother died when they were supposed to be watching them, and they're incapable of forgiving themselves for that. And it could just turn into just a whole bunch of hatred towards other people for random things. So whatever the reason is, if somebody's incapable of forgiving themselves, they're incapable of forgiving others. So be good to yourself, be compassionate to yourself, forgive yourself, and then it'll make you more able to be compassionate and loving towards other people. Okay?